Hello guys, it's Chummas returning another Beyblade video. This time is a bit of an interesting one. I'm going to be rating every single Beyblade X Bay that's been released so far, going from Drawn Sword to Shinobi Shadow. Before I say anything else, this is not a competitive ranking, and I'm actually not even getting into the performance of these things at all. I don't care about doing battles in the slightest, that's just not my thing, so instead, we're going to rate these based on design. Now, I will be giving two different scores. The first is kind of just physical design, how do they look, typical thing you might expect, but the other rating will be thematic design. What is the idea of these bays? What are they kind of hoping to accomplish with, their identity effectively? So with that, I will rate them on that score, which is a little bit different than I think most people would talk about them, I guess. Kind of unique, I hope. Anyway, so with that, the reason I'm doing this video is basically because I wanted to start incorporating these ratings into my unboxings, but we're already quite a few bays into Beyblade X, so starting with Weiss Tiger, I'll do that, but to make up for the bays I haven't done yet, we're going to do that here, so let's just go ahead and start. So first up here we got Drawn Sword. Drawn Sword looks pretty cool. Pretty basic blade, but fairly effective. You got the gear chip design. It looks nice. 360 flat. Color design's good. Works nicely. I'll give this thing like a 6 out of 10 for appearance. It's just a solid early bay. And also, by the way, for in terms of like when these were released, if two bays are fairly similar in terms of like how they look or how they perform, or not perform, but how they are thematically. I will take that into account, so if a bay was released first, then I'll rate it normally, but if it was released second, then I might have some complaints because, it just feels too similar to another bay. Anyway, so this is one of the first, bays, the first bay, so yeah, obviously it's going to score higher, because it was the first to really do anything like this. Just a basic early attack type makes sense. In terms of its theme, kind of the same thing. It's an early attack type. 3 blades, the ratchet lines up nicely, a basic flat. 6 out of 10 for thematic design as well. Just a solid bay overall. Moving on to Hell Scythe. Now this bay is, it's interesting. So first up, in terms of its appearance, blade looks okay, has like a scythe design going on, but it's just kind of, it's okay looking. I like the gear chip design though. 460 and taper, they look fine. I'm going to give this thing a 5 out of 10 for design, though. I'm not... in terms of appearance, I'm getting a 5 out of 10. It's okay. I feel like the shape is just a little bit too bland looking for me to care more about this thing. So the red is a little bit light for me, which is maybe slightly darker. Like just a shade darker, I think this thing... And maybe a bit more of a pronounced shape with these scythes here. I think that could have made this bay way better, but as is, it's okay. 5 out of 10, that's decent, In terms of its sort of identity and, thematic design, I'll also give it a 5 out of 10 because, well, it works as an early balance type, so I can't complain about that, but I just don't like balance types a lot of the time. I'm probably going to make a whole Beyblade discussion on this at some point. I don't know if it'll just be types as a whole or just balance types, but I don't think balance types work a lot of the time. It's just a very whatever shape. It's just kind of there. Like, yeah, this thing works for stamina competitively, but that wasn't really designed. That wasn't the intent. That wasn't what this thing was designed to do. It was meant to just be kind of an all-rounder, and all-rounders, usually they either end up falling into a niche, as this one does with, being round, or the shape is just too generalized to do absolutely anything. Taper, this thing you could argue is just like it's an attack bit. Like, it's slower, yeah, but attack patterns exist for this thing. Like, yeah, it's an attack bit. 460 thematically works fine with it, but yeah, 5 out of 10, because I just think basic balance types are not great in general. And I hope that we move away from them over time. Next up, Wizard Arrow, design-wise, I like this thing quite a bit. The blade, really nice looking blade. 480 pairs fine enough with it. Ball works with it. Design-wise, and the color scheme looks pretty good. I like kind of the lighter yellow and the darker yellow. Maybe this could have been a little bit darker here, I'm not going to lie. but it still looks really good overall. I like the shape, especially for the blade. I'm actually going to give this thing an 8 out of 10. It's really good. Again, a couple slight issues, but it's still really good overall. Thematically, basic sound type, very round. At these couple points here, so it's not like too broken. I mean, you don't want to have your first sound type to be perfect, so it makes sense. 480, fairly sensible choice. Ball is a sensible stamina choice. It's a solid early stamina type. So again, 6 out of 10. And then we, of course, get to Night Shield. Night Shield, design-wise, it's just very kind of round, and I almost think generic looking. It's kind of whatever. 380, sensible for it. Needle, sensible for it. They look fine. Color scheme's fine. I just feel like this is like the bay that you'd expect like a random character to use that's like not important at all. It just looks a little bit too generic for me, so I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. It's still okay, but just kind of whatever. Thematically speaking, it's round, kind of bulky, 380 and needle, they pair with the thing. As a defense type, it's an early defense type, 6 out of 10. It's solid at what it's trying to do. Now we get our first remake, Dronzer S. So as far as these remakes go, I will be, rating the design as is, but in terms of the thematic design, I will, I'm kind of judging it based on how well it remakes the original Bay. So with that in mind, first up, Dronzer S, the blade, it looks pretty good here. I mean, obviously the weight disc sticks out a little bit more than, maybe you'd want it to, but I kind of get why they did that. 380, it looks a little bit awkward on this thing, I'm not going to lie, but it is what it is. Taper, yeah, probably not the best choice here. Kind of don't like this that much. I don't know. Design-wise, it looks fine. Like, I don't know. Taper's, like, I guess fine. Doesn't really make much of a difference in terms of the appearance, but, like, 380, I don't like how it pairs with the thing. It's okay. 5 out of 10. It looks decent. Thematically, though, this thing, so this is just an issue with remakes in general. They make these shapes, they have to round off the shapes, make them worse, and you can tell right here, of course, with, like, the edge here on the, blocking that off, but they make these bays very light. I'm not really getting into weight very often. There's a couple of cases where I will, but like in terms of like the weight of these bays, they don't matter too much, for design. But with the remakes, you're kind of making the shape less like the original to accommodate the system, which is understandable. But then you make these things so light to the point that they're just generally worse than what they should be. So if you don't want people to use these bays, which again with the weight, it's like they don't want people to, why not just get rid of the metal entirely and just make these plastic and just let them be like that and then carry the original designs as is because they're just plastic, right? Obviously I don't want them to actually do this, just make these a couple grams heavier and we're good, but as is, I feel like the trade-off on the design changes isn't justified because these things suck, they're too light, which bothers me with how they're trying to theme these things and changing them up. 380, again, and I don't like the ratchet pairing here on this one. Also, I think this is too tall for Dronzer. Taper, this should have been point. There isn't a great bit that really works for Dronzer, if we're being honest, but I think point was closer. Yes, this came out before point existed, but, like, clearly point had to have been planned by the time this thing was, conceptualized. It only released, like, 2 months later, so they probably should have just held out for it. Yeah, in terms of, like, thematic design, 2 out of 10. This thing is really bad. Next up, Night Lance. Night Lance is an interesting bay. In terms of appearance, I like kind of the more jagged shape. It definitely looks a little bit more interesting. I like the, teal and purple thing going on here. The ratchet, for 480, I don't like the pairing here, but the color scheme is very cool looking. Also like the color in High Needle, which also works fairly well for this thing. This bay, I don't like 480 very much, and it's like not the craziest looking bay, but it still looks really good. I like the color design a lot. Feeling, like 6 out of 10 on this thing, it's solid. Thematically though, okay. The blade's kind of more of a counter defense thing, has more recoil than average, sure. But then you have 480, which I feel like this thing maybe shouldn't have been as tall if the whole thing was to, like, have like this whole counter thing. maybe have like, this would have been a good spot to bring out like a 70 height, but if they didn't want to do that yet, I'd almost just recommend like 60, which I think would have actually worked very well. This should not have been 4-sided, this should have been 3-sided, by the way, but yeah. Maybe like 360. High needle, I think, actually works pretty well for this thing, but because it's higher, it would have worked well at 360, because then it would have been like a 70 height, which is perfect. But then you have the issue of it's not a 60 height, it's an 80 height, so this thing's really tall and destabilizes easily, and it doesn't really play into the gimmick very well in my eyes. It just doesn't work very well as a defense type. The counter gimmick I don't think is as great because it's just very tall and awkward. 3 out of 10. Yeah, it's kind of bad. Next up, Shark Edge. This thing, it looks really cool. I like the kind of design of this thing. I like the upper attack design. I like the color scheme a lot. 360 and low flat color-wise are very, they're very, very good. Low flat makes sense for this thing. Obviously, you know, also looks good. The ratchet's my only real design issue. Don't like that it's 3-sided. It should have been, well, I think 2-sided would have been great, but if not, like 4-sided, I guess. Although it's not the best attack type thing, I know, but like, just would have made, like, I don't know, 3-sided ratchet just doesn't make sense here. That's the only problem I have with this thing. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I think it's great, just like in terms of appearance, but the 360 part of this thing I don't like. In terms of thematic design, it's, well, it's interesting. I mean, you have an attack blade with, an uppercut type of deal going on. That's pretty cool. Also, low flat makes it more aggressive, and also, lower to the ground, works with the uppercut. Cool. 360, again, the proper height for this ratchet, but again, the contact point amount, not perfect. Still a cool design. I mean, uppercuts, not like overly inventive, but hey, it's still nice. Gonna give this thing an 8 out of 10, though. I think it is still a really well-designed bay. Thematically, I do wish the ratchet could have been better, though. Now we get to Cobalt Drake. Cobalt Drake, in terms of appearance, without the paint, I think this thing actually looks pretty cool. Like the 4-sided shape of it's nice. I like the color design. But the paint also does add quite a bit to this thing. 460 and flat. 460 I think works for this bay. It's 4-sided. Flat's fine. The color scheme is great on this thing, though. Honestly, for appearance, 9 out of 10. It might be a little bit lower without the paint, but yeah, no, the paint really makes it even better. And it would have been a great, a really good design anyway, but yeah, this thing is just great. Thematically, this is clearly like a prototype type of bay. It's not that big of a deal for it to not be as interesting, but still, it's not very interesting. The blade, it's fairly whatever, and the parts, like 460 works with it, like pairs with it fine, but that's that, and then flat's boring. Fairly basic bay. Again, clearly meant to be a prototype type of bay for a later Drake, but for now, is what it is. So 4 out of 10, it just kind of exists, and it's not the best thing. Now we get to, of course, Leon Claw. Leon Claw is pretty interesting. So this thing, in terms of design, I think it looks pretty cool. The shape's nice. You got the gold, the black. Okay, cool. Ratchet pairs nicely. Point looks fine. Color scheme's good, I would say. Yeah, 7 out of 10. It's a good bay. It looks good. In terms of design, though, the blade, it's sort of meant to be defensive, but if it tilts, has like these attack points up here, which is interesting. 560 pairs nicely with the bay, and then point. Well, the whole thing is obviously if it's spinning straight, has more stamina, has a pairs well with the blade because it's more defensive. But if it tilts, kind of counters, moves faster, which pairs into tilting with the blade having the attack points. Really good design, actually. 8 out of 10. I like this design a lot. It's not like the craziest thing ever, but it's still just kind of cool. And they finally made like a point type of idea work well, I would say, because generally, like in the past, like flat, sharp, or fusion, have not been the biggest fan of these types of things. But here, I think it works well and pairs well with the blade. So finally, a bay like this is getting some credit. Moving on to Viper Tail. I thought this thing was going to look great before I got it, and well, then I got it, and Yeah, it looks pretty interesting though. Like the overall design of the blade, I like. Color design though, not the biggest fan of it honestly. In terms of parts, yeah, 580. Five-sided ratchet, not sure about that. 80 height makes sense. Orb is okay for this color design. For the ratchet and blade, ratchet and bit, it's fine. I kind of wish that this was like a more of an orange here. Same with the blade. I wish this was just like blue and orange. That would have been great, but I feel like the color design holds it back for me. Otherwise, it's a pretty solidly designed bay. But that's all it could be, so I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10 for its appearance. Wish the color design was just, again, more blue and orange rather than whatever we got here. Conceptually, bay, like, drains spin. This whole idea, it, like, comes down and drains spin, so it wants to be taller, which is where the 80 ratchet comes in. Cool, 5 sides a little bit awkward. Orb makes enough sense for this thing. I actually like the idea behind this thing. Going to give it a 7 out of 10. It's good. Moving on to Rhino Horn. Rhino Horn, this bay, looks pretty solid. Kind of to, just have a kind of a neutral, not neutral shape, but kind of a defensive shape. Has a lot of recoil, but yeah. Color scheme's pretty nice looking. 380, probably could have been four-sided, honestly, in terms of, like, pairing with the blade, but is what it is. 80 makes sense. Spike, sure. Color scheme is also good. Spike, I think, adds some color to this thing while not, like, being overly weird. Colors are kind of muted, but hey, Spike, I feel like the color is also somewhat muted. Looks brighter on camera than in person, but yeah. Design-wise, it's just solid. 6 out of 10. And also conceptually, it's meant to be like a compact bay, which it is compact. Again, 3-sided ratchet, not sure about that. Spike makes sense for the bay, honestly. So again, 6 out of 10. This bay is just solid all around, I would say. Then we have Drawn Dagger. Oh boy. Drawn Dagger, well, in terms of appearance, I don't like the blade. The blue and white, the color scheme's fine. Gear chip is okay, but I don't like the 6-sided thing going on here. The blades, in my opinion, just look kind of boring. 460, color scheme looks great, but I don't think this should have been a 4-sided bay, honestly, or 4-sided ratchet. Rush, color design makes sense. The color design of this entire bay is very good, but Rush, I'm sorry, it looks awful. I don't like how Rush looks in the slightest. It looks terrible. This bay, 4 out of 10. Kind of subpar in terms of appearance, in my opinion. However, thematically, this kind of has like a barrage attack going on, which is cool. The 4-sided ratchet, I do think brings it down a point, though. That was a dumb choice, but Rush, okay. A little bit slower, not as aggressive of an attack type. Also, you have the gears here, there's less of them. So it's slower on the extreme line. It reduces the amount of stamina used, so it gets there more often. And, well, it could use it more often. And also, again, kind of the barrage design of the blade. I think that this bay conceptually works very well, despite the fact that I don't like how it looks. But, hey, thematically, I actually like this thing, so I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Alright, next up here, we have Hell's Chain. Almost kind of an inversion of Drawn Dagger, in a sense. In terms of appearance, this thing looks great. I like the gear chip a lot. The design of the blade's really cool. I like the chains on here. It looks nice. 560, thematically, well, not thematically, but yeah, I mean, this thing pairs well with the blade. And then High Taper looks fine. I think the color scheme is great here. Like, really great. I like kind of the, almost magenta-ish color. And then got the black here. Only thing that would have made this better is that this part of the ratchet was black. That would have made this thing like a 9, maybe even a 10 out of 10. But as is, I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. I like it a lot. Thematically, though, this thing is too similar to Hell Scythe. Again, the blade's just kind of a general whatever shape, kind of round. Okay, cool. It's 5-sided now. It's like the main difference. Great. The ratchet does pair nicely with it. Cool. And then High Taper. It's a bit taller. That's nice. But the bottom part's the exact same as normal taper. This bay just feels way too similar to kind of the theme of Hell Scythe, in my opinion. So, I'm gonna give it a 4.5 out of 10. Yeah, I don't want to use half scores often, but in this case, I think it makes sense because it's just conceptually a little bit too similar to Hell Scythe, and that did it first. So I'm gonna reduce a half point for this one. So that's that. Moving on to Phoenix Feather. Phoenix Feather is interesting. So by itself, I mean, it looks nice, like the gold gear chip, like the gear chip design. You got the red back here. Three-sided, looks cool, like the kind of almost feather-like design here. Underneath, 360 flat. Very basic parts, but hey, 360 pairs well, flat, works fine. In terms of the color scheme, looks good. Flat, I've seen people use the black flat or this red flat. I've seen both. Either way, I think it looks fine. I guess like the red one, it kind of matches more, but at the same time, you could argue the black flat, it contrasts more, which is interesting. But at the same time, in terms of the contrast, I feel like black on this dark red isn't the best, but at the same time, the light red on this dark of a red, I'm not sure about that. So it's kind of weird either way, but it's fine. The bay overall, I'm gonna give it like a 6 out of 10. It just seems solid enough. Conceptually, very similar to Cobalt Drake. The blade, it's clearly setting up just for a later bay, which this time we already have it with Phoenix Wing, but is what it is. 360 flat, just basic parts. They pair really well enough though, but yeah, clearly just like a prototype design, so is what it is. 4 out of 10 because it just kind of exists and is whatever, but makes sense. Now we get to its actual successor, Phoenix Wing. Phoenix Wing, this bay is a weird one. Probably one of the most popular bays. Phoenix Wing, you got the gold gear chip, cool looking gear, actual sticker design for the gear chip. Blade itself, the red and gold is very cool, but I think it's hard carried by this paint. Design-wise, this is very, very boring in my eyes. Just another three-sided attacker. 960 looks pretty good, but color design is fine. And then gear flat, well, I actually like how it looks, and then the color design, black, that's pretty nice. I think this bay looks good. I do think it's hard carried by the paint, because if this thing didn't have paint, I think it would look like a 4 out of 10, but with the paint, it's pretty cool. It's hard carried by it though, so I'm not going higher than 7 out of 10. Looks good, but again, nothing else about this bay is very special. In terms of its theming, it was meant to be pretty fast, almost like a mirror of Drawn Sword, I feel, in some ways. So being a three-sided attacker makes sense. 960 gear flat makes sense, but I feel like it's also just too similar in that sense. It just feels too much like a basic attack type, to the point where I really don't care. I'm giving this thing a 5.5 out of 10. Similar case to, Hell's Chain to Hell Scythe. This one, of course, Phoenix Wing's a Drawn Sword. I wish that maybe this thing had a little bit more going on, honestly. If it did, I probably would have rated it a little bit higher, but it doesn't, so 5.5 out of 10. I'm still very disappointed that this was our December starter and did not have more going on. Next up, Wyvern Gale. Wyvern Gale, this is a fun one. The blade looks great. I really like this blade design. I also like the gear chip design, the color scheme, the color of this bay looks great. 580 in terms of colors, color design, it looks pretty good, but I don't know if it needed to be 5-sided. Is what it is though. It's not that big of a deal. Gearball. I actually like the way Gearball looks. It looks really nice. This bay was on its way to get somewhere between a 7 or a 9 out of 10, but it's a 5 out of 10. It's just very mixed in my eyes, because this yellow here, a bit too dark, and not sure about yellow in general on this bay. I know that they like to, pair the color of the bit with the type. Stop that. It doesn't work a lot of the times. There's colors that probably would have worked better in many cases, but because they want to stick to that stupid idea, this is what happens, and you get a yellow bit which doesn't look good, and then you make it a darker shade that really doesn't look good. This bit ruins the entire bay for me. Well, not the entire bay, but it makes it look significantly worse. Had this been a light green, this bay would be a 9. But because this bit is so ugly looking on this bay and ruins the color scheme, it doesn't ruin the design of the bay itself. Again, like physically, that part's fine. But yeah, color scheme. Like I mean, well, physically I mean by that I meant like mold, like the shape of the bay. But color design, no, this ruins it entirely. Completely kills the design. So 5 out of 10. It's mid. Thematically, this bay has like this whole airflow thing, kind of like curves a lot. Cool enough stamina gimmick. It's fairly round, 580. Wish it wasn't this shape, or not shape, but like this contact point amount. A 4-sided ratchet probably would have made a little bit more sense here. At least I feel. Maybe even 3-sided. I'm not sure about that, but whatever. 580. It's okay. Gear ball. Not doing a whole lot, but it's fine. This bay, I don't know. I feel like it's just not that interesting of a sound type. Like, yeah, you have the airflow thing, but it's not, again, not that interesting. Again, just feels kind of basic for a sound type, so I'm going to give this thing a 5 out of 10. It's kind of whatever. And bland. So, yeah, it's pretty mixed in my opinion. Next bay. We have Unicorn Sting. Okay, Unicorn Sting. I really like the blade design here. You got like one side that's like smoother, one side's more jagged. The gear chip's really cool. I like the color scheme a lot on this thing. Flipping it over at 560 might not have been the best choice of a ratchet, but at the same time, you can have like 2 contact points on the smoother side and like 3 on the more jagged side. I guess that's like a way to look at it. You can like have more on the more contact points on the jagged side. I guess that's kind of cool. So it's not like the worst choice of ratchet in terms of the ones that don't really pair properly. Gear point, fair enough, I guess. It kind of tilts and can be aggressive, and you have like this the stamina and defense thing going on. So yeah, in terms of appearance though, yeah, it looks really good. Everything here, I guess the 5-sided thing's whatever, but still, like, the bit works fine. Color scheme on this thing is absolutely phenomenal. So I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. It's really good. Thematically, though, this bay is okay. I mean, it has, like, again, the 2 sides to it. Cool. 5-sided ratchets, kind of whatever. Gear point. It can tilt. I mean, again, you kind of have, like, the attack and defense thing going on, where it's like, oh, it spins normally. So, yeah, that kind of represents this side, whereas if it goes more aggressive, it represents this side. The problem is that I think Leon Cola just did that better. Still having the 2 sides is like kind of interesting, but it's still kind of whatever, I'm not going to lie. So, thematically, 5 out of 10. It's okay, but yeah, not the best, and Leon Cola just, again, did it better. Moving on to our next bay, Sphinx Cowl. Sphinx Cowl, it looks like a very, very basic defense type, I'm not gonna lie. 980 pairs with it fairly well. Gear Needle looks good. Everything about this bay is just fine. However, the color scheme, I really like this color scheme. You got like the brown underneath here, you got the yellow here, you got like a bunch of like different shades of teal going on. Color scheme kind of carries this thing, I'm not gonna lie. It's a 6 out of 10 for me. It's solid because, well, the bay itself is just very whatever, but like, yeah, the color scheme looks really good here. In terms of its like conceptual, like in thematic design though, very, very basic defense type. Basic shape, 980 pairs well but doesn't do anything else, and then Gear Needle. I don't care about the gear part, you can't convince me this isn't just a basic defense type bit. This bay was released like 7 months after X started. It's a super bland and boring defense type. 4 out of 10. That's just, it's been too long at this point to be pulling this type of stuff, so not great in my eyes. Not horrible, but still not great. Next up, Drawn Buster. This bay. Alright, this bay, it looks very cool. It's a very striking design. I like the dark blue, got the light blue, I like the gear chip design. The overall shape reminds me of like an Excalibur from Burst. Looks really cool. 160 and XL have good color composition with the rest of the bay. 160 pairs nicely with this thing, which looks good. Excel, a little bit bulkier. I kind of like how it looks. This is my favorite looking Beyblade X base so far. 10 out of 10. I really like this thing. And thematically, it's also very good. Because again, this whole idea is being kind of a single strike bay. You have the main contact point right here, which achieves that. And I don't care about competitive or whatever. Again, I'm talking thematically. I know some people are gonna be, oh, but Drawn Buster, there's other attack types that are better. And Excel's not good. I don't care. We're talking about thematic stuff. So you have the whole one-hit idea, which is very cool. And 160, pairs well with that. And then there's Excel, which is very chaotic, especially when it gets to the extreme line. And yeah, this thing's low stamina, but here's the thing. When it gets to the extreme line, it can go abnormally fast because the, extra gears here. And the extreme line itself is meant to give kind of a big attack. You go along it, you build up speed, fly off, and it pairs with the concept of this bay kind of meaning to have one big hit, and it pairs with the extreme line giving you one big hit, and it makes you even faster on the extreme line. This bay, thematically, again, I don't care about how it performs exactly. Yeah, I know its performance is questionable at times, but again, thematically speaking, perfect. 10 out of 10. This is definitely my favorite Beyblade X base so far, because I just think they nailed it. Moving on to Hell's Hammer. Hell's Hammer, this is a kind of a weird bay. I like how it looks. I like the color design, red and orange. The gear chip design itself, I'm kind of mixed on, honestly. It looks okay, though. Blade design's pretty cool. Kind of weirdly small bay, but that's fine. 370 pairs well with this thing. 70 height's pretty unique, and also, I guess that was something new to look at. And then Hexa, pretty cool bit. Overall, bay's a little bit weird to look at, I'm not going to lie, but I still like it quite a bit, so still going to give it an 8 out of 10. I still really like this bay. It's just weird, though. And thematically, this whole theme is almost just being weird, I feel like. You got, kind of this downward smash thing going on. There's, these little, like dent type of things in the blade. Looks very weird. 370 pairs nicely with it, and being a little bit taller makes sense. I think not using an 80 ratchet was a smart idea here, but you wanted it to be a little bit taller, because again, you kind of have those, downward smash attacks, and then Hexa, just a very weird bit, but it kind of spins, normally, has decent stamina, but has the extra gears, so if it does get to the extreme line, it can go very fast and get a strong attack. I think this bay's whole thing is just to be super weird, and I think it just pulls it off. 9 out of 10. It's a great design, great thematic design bay. Yeah, very, very good. Next up, we have Wizard Rod. Wizard Rod, in terms of appearance, I was not sold on this thing when I first saw the images of it, but after having it in hand, it looks great. I like the additional, size to this bay. I like the 5-sided thing with these circles here. I like the color scheme. I really like this gear chip design. 570 works perfectly with it. It looks nice. I like the color of it. I like, disc ball. That looks really cool. I like the extra, disc. It makes it look unique. The design of this thing looks great. I like the yellow and stuff. 9 out of 10. It's great. And thematic design. It's a Sound type bay. And, well, it's kind of bigger. And, has good outward weight distribution while being very round. The ratchet pairs nicely with it. It's also has a 70 height, which is shorter than typical stamina types, but, disc ball is taller than normal, so it adds the height back in. Smart choice by Taco Chomi to use a 70 height here. Got the ball, that makes sense, but also the disc to kind of help it stay upright. This just takes, every good stamina gimmick and puts it into one. Technically, the identity of this bay is, I guess you could argue, slightly, lacking because it doesn't do anything overly unique. But every, kind of smaller, good attribute that a stamina type can have, it does, and I think that just makes it really, really good thematically, which I like. And because of that, giving it a 9 out of 10. Now we, of course, get to our next remake. Drigger S. It looks pretty good. Again, same weight, contact point issues as Dronzer. is what it is. 480, I don't like the 80 height here, but I do think the four-sided ratchet works better here than 380 on Dronzer. Point, okay, I have to actually take something back from my unboxing. I said point and taper should be swapped between Dronzer and Drigger. I take that back. I think they both should have had point, honestly. And point actually works better for this bay than it does Dronzer, so I was wrong there. However, I think, it works better than Dronzer for sure. And this actually looks really cool as well. So in terms of appearance, I'll give it a probably like a 6 out of 10. Pretty solid. Still has the issues though, but yeah. Thematically, the bay works better. The ratchet choice is at least okay. The bit's fine. But I just can't get past the blade and how they're ruining these blades. 3 out of 10. It's still bad because, the weight, just pick one. Go the weird route and just keep them being like display pieces, and I guess just make them plastic at that point just to allow their original designs to exist. Or do the sensible idea of, keeping the modified shapes to make them function in the system, but actually, let them be comparable to other bays. That'd be great. So, still just disappointing to see how light these are. Next up, we have Tyranno Beat. Tyranno Beat is pretty interesting. This bay, in terms of appearance, I like the brown and the red going on. That's pretty cool. I like the gear chip design. The blade, I like kind of these like diamond type of designs here, like the pattern. Kind of an oval-ish bay, which is pretty cool. Just like the kind of smash attacks this thing can give. 470 looks really good on this bay. I think it pairs nicely. Although this would have been a great time to get a two-sided ratchet. It pairs well. I do have problems with it, but I guess it's more of a thematic issue, but it looks good at least, like good enough. Quake looks great, looks unique. Also, I actually really like the blue here. It's just such a bold choice that I can't help but to just respect it. Nothing overly special looking, but it still looks very cool, so I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Thematically, I like jumping bays, so Quake's very cool by default. Tyranno Beat, I wish maybe was like a little bit crazier than what it is, honestly, but it's still cool. 470, I kind of wish it wasn't a four-sided ratchet because it is a little, more burst prone because of that. And when this bay is meant to be very chaotic, that would have been nice to, see something else. Work a little bit better thematically. 70, I get they want to make 470, but this should have been 80 height. This would have been a great time for like 280 or something. 80 just would have worked better with the jumping gimmick in my eyes. So even though I like the jumping part of this thing with Quake, I feel like some of the other parts fail a little bit. So I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. It's still solid. I still really like the gimmick, but I think it could have been improved a bit. And lastly, for this video, again, I'll do more readings with more unboxings, but for this video, this is it. Shinobi Shadow. Oh boy, this is a bay right here. In terms of design, this blade looks absolutely phenomenal. I like the shape, I like everything about this blade, I like the color scheme, it's great. 180, in terms of color design, it looks good, but the thematic design, not thematic design, just like the one side of this thing looks awkward, and then Metal Needle shape looks good, but the color design I don't like. I don't like the green here. Said this in my unboxing, but I think the green needed to be a bit more muted to work with the other colors because they're more muted. Or they could have made a color, closer to these, but have it be more vibrant like this is. Pick one. Doing both didn't end up being, as good. It doesn't ruin the color design of this bay like Gearball does on Wyvern Gale, but it does hinder it quite a bit. I still think it's a 7 out of 10, though. It's still a good-looking bay. Mainly because this blade looks phenomenal. I mean, 180s, whatever, this isn't the best, but still, I can't help but like this bay. Well, in terms of appearance, because thematically this bay is absolutely atrocious. The design of this bay is to basically parry attacks and deflect bays. That's cool. I like that. For a UX bay, meant to be more dynamic. That's a sensible defense idea. A little bit basic, but still makes enough sense, I would say. So that's cool and all, but it's very light. So it's meant to deflect bays, but it can also get tossed around pretty easily. See, I get it being like average weight because maybe the whole pairing thing would have been too good otherwise, but like making this thing like 28 grams, that was really stupid. The only way this would have worked is if it was on rubber needle, and that was kind of like the trade-off. Is like the parts like are kind of locked together. Well, I guess not locked together, but the blade was locked to the bit, and that could have been cool. Or at least just make the blade heavier. I mean, the blade could be heavier either way, but like if you're gonna make it lighter, at least pair it with like rubber needle. They did not make rubber needle for this thing. 180. This part didn't need to exist, but it especially did not need to exist on this bay. 180. Horrible, horrible choice for this bay. Does not work for it at all. Metal needle. Again, thematically, not good. Even if this blade was heavy, metal needle reduces friction because it's metal. And this is a bay that's meant to parry and deflect bays, yet you want it to not hold its ground. You could have made this bay light. Maybe not as light as it is, but still could have been on the lighter side. But with rubber needle, this bay would have made so much sense. And they blew it by using metal needle. This bay does not work well at all. The composition of the thematic design is atrocious here. 1 out of 10. This is our worst bay in terms of thematic design. It is absolutely terrible. Which is unfortunate because it looks so cool. At least the blade does. But yeah. Anyways, that's gonna about do it for this video. That was like a 45-minute video. Or at least like above 40 minutes. Jeez. So there you go. Now you're all caught up on my opinions on every bay. I will be kind of keeping this rating system for the future bays. Kind of awkward to have to do 2 ratings, but at the same time I feel like there is a big difference between, physical design and thematic design. I thought it was kind of interesting to kind of bring this into play because, again, I do not care about competitive at all. So hopefully it gives me more of a thing to talk about because, again, I could not care less about battles and stuff. So, yeah, anyway. Those are my updated ratings. Now they're all there. They all exist. And now for future bays, I can just rate them and have the, pre-existing context already exist. So, there we go. So anyways, that's all for this video. So, yeah. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye.